we're at.
Rightio, good to go.
It's just dialed. I don't know, I haven't actually.
Just off left edge, 9 o'clock. That's pretty close.
Too much wind.
Yep. Just on the edge of plate.
Nice little flutter of plate of paint, isn't it?
It sure was.
I think we might have a little bit of irregular wind, but
yeah,
a little bit flat.
Yeah. Edge of plate.
Well, that's sort of consistent at the moment. Another one, then I'll move it across.
Rightio. Nine o'clock. Just in from the edge of plate.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's a interesting 3-shot group, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Bloody 3 inches at 1,000 yards. 1,080 yards. Okay, moved across, so let's get close to the sound. G'day and welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. This week we've been up to a couple more rifles, or a couple more barrels that we've been bedding in. Last week, for those people who saw the video, we did the 300 PRC. This week we did this one and another one, and I suppose I'll go through a little bit of the story and a little bit of what I'm up to. As I mentioned last week, the 300 PRC, there was a new barrel company which was the beginning of that process, and that the 300 PRC was what I picked for that as a fairly popular new round, a little bit in the way of drawing attention to it, but to go through with the rifle and the chassis that we're using from GCPD. The two that I did this week, running in barrels, were done in a little bit of a very different process, but all picked up at the same time. So I had 3 barrels to go through and run in and sort out and get into rifles and make them all work. The 2 barrels this week, first of all, pretty windy week, so not awesome shooting with what we did. Still worked well, but pretty windy, and really only for good for what we did. So what were these 2 barrels? Well, I suppose a couple of things what I'm doing. Ultimately, I'm up to the R&D, I suppose, research and development, to work out what I think would be a really, I don't know for the ultimate, but a really good ELR or ULR, extreme long range round, in the way of getting everything right, getting all the bits and pieces right and working as well as it can. And in the brackets of that, that's my summation at the moment is probably a bullet in the 200 to 300 grain, or around the 200 grains, I think, really, probably in the way of bullet weight, with a lot of speed would be a really good option, but I'm testing there step by step in a couple of different directions to sort of figure that out, and there's some other details that I'm bringing into that equation. One of them is this 6mm SAUM that you see in front of us. So that's a 6mm, it's 115 grain in a short action ultra magnum. And where there's a little bit more of the story than just that, the simple logic with that was we're talking a very small bullet in a very good ballistic coefficient for its size versus weight, but it's still very low, so its ballistic coefficient is low because it's a small bullet, doesn't have that much mass, but it's a very small bullet, and in an ultra magnum case we're able to make it travel very quickly. A little bit of the logic that goes with, if you see its buddy next to it, where you've seen this rifle before, that is the 6.5, so that's a short action 6.5 SAUM. This is actually the RS gap, and that's how this rifle was originally done up. Going through this rifle briefly, this is the MDT in the LSS XL chassis, which has got one of my barrel guards. This is the thing that goes over the top of it, which actually I mount my bipod on. It's got the Bighorn action, it's got the Gen 2 Recon scope,
or the G2 and the Recon VALDADA scope. One of our bag riders on it. This is all shoots up, one of our muzzle brakes on the front of it, but all shot really, really well and really halfway through its development, but we're waiting for the bullets. Over here in Australia, it's a bit longer time getting things. We're waiting for the 156 grain in the burger to go in this, where I think this will really turn into all the things it can be. It's already shot out to 3,000 yards, shoots really well, doing really nicely, but I'm waiting for that bullet and also waiting for the new Hornady A-tip to go through and run that 6.5 to where it can go. In the mix of that, I have, as people that know the channel, I have just a simple old Hauer 243. It's in a XLR chassis, and I had a new barrel. I bought a new barrel for that. A 6mm barrel in a 1 and 8 twist, and I had that set up to, well, I was going to change that rifle over to an Ackley improved, a 243 Ackley improved. In the way of a little bit more efficiency, really good caliber, I really like the caliber, so that was the plan. My problem with that is that 243 still shoots so damn well. That was the one we just shot an egg at just over 1,100 yards. It's shooting beautifully, and there's a little bit of, yes, I could do that, the barrel will still be good, I could put it back together, but really, why mess with that gun? It's so nice, it's working so well. And why not go a little step further? Hence the 6mm SAUM, which is exactly what we've done here. So we took that barrel, chopped it to 27 inches, so it's exactly the same as the 27 inch in the 6.5. And it turns into a little bit of R&D for us. It's a little bit of content, a little bit of an interesting cartridge to play with and do some R&D with and do some testing with. But it is also seeing in two very similar, but one running 115 grains in the 6mm, and then which can obviously run a fair bit more speed, and probably going to the 156mm, 153mm, whatever it ends up being as to where it is working the best. And just do the comparison between them. So like I said, a little bit of an excuse of, there's a barrel I had sitting there, I left the 243 alone. This one's set up to pretty easy to change this barrel over, nice on that sort of score, and we're running very similar things, and there's a little bit of the R&D process of how we go with what we're running in that round.
Are we doing a clean?
And I should say, all the cases were being fire formed. What I did to create this was simply take 7mm Bertram brass, BB brass, and so 7mm SAUM, that brass. I neck sized it down to 6.5, which is nice and easy. I've got all the gear to do that sort of stuff. I then trimmed it down to 14 thou in the case. So I turned it, I should say, 14 thou thickness there, and then I sized it down again, made myself up a simple little neck sizer to take it down to the 6mm, and then fire formed it like that. So a little convoluted in the process of getting there. Ended up with 15 thou in my neck thickness on turned brass. Did all the rest of it. Did the trimming and did the flash hole unifying. Did all the other bits and pieces through the brass. It'll go through annealing after it's fired. But that shot really well. As we found with other ones, it's gradually raising in speed. We started in the mid 3150s. I'm also running just the 225 or Rotumbo powder, which is probably a little bit slow for this little cartridge. Still shot really well, and just a place to start a little slower with bedding in the barrel. And it was running low pressures, not too much at all, but still running the 3150s it started with. We ended up in the 3250s is what I was running, so 3,250 feet per second. With 115 grain projectiles. I'd expect to get into the 34s, maybe touch a 35, but I expect to get into probably the 34s is what I expect or hope to be able to get into with those. But this shot today, when it shot it, we just shot 30 of those rounds. It started a group really well. It was really holding down a sort of a 4 or 5 inch group at 1,000 yards with a reasonable amount of wind, 1,080 yards. But just bedding in and that sort of stuff, like I said, just running the barrel in, all running nicely. Thing shoots awesomely. It's a Magnum that Sam's going to be very happy to shoot. She has a few shots with it, but really almost no recoil in it. Really nice little tap, good high bullet speed, And they're light, only 115 grain projectiles, but with very little wind drag because of the size of them, I expect some pretty nice things out there. And it's going to be really interesting to compare these things at a 2,000 yards, 2,500 yards, and compare how the 6mm goes out there. It's still got any speed, but it's also an understanding more so of this powder weight ratio, how much that powder weight ratio is to your benefit versus the BC and versus by how much you're getting buffed around. And I suppose that moves into the next one we did this week. I'll leave this rifle up here, but the next one we did was this one here. Quite a bit of a step up. That's the 416 Barrett. Now, a little bit of the same logic actually. Well, I suppose there's another logic that works in what I'm up to there. We have, this is one of our bullets that we'll be testing this year when the paddocks come back. This is our custom bullet that we've done in the 50 BMG. And the truth of it was the 50, no matter what I do, in a moderate weight gun, so it's still I've forgotten exact weight on it, but not too far over the 30 pounds. So it's a moderate weight rifle, still pretty heavy it's not a hunting rifle in any fashion, but it's still in the world where it is a man shot. Now you've seen the rifle, it shoots on its sliding bipod underneath there. It still has to deal with all the recoil and shoot and do all the right bits and pieces. And we're getting a bullet that works in it. What a little bit of the logic there is to take that same rifle that I've started to make work pretty well in shooting a 800 to a 900 grain bullet, and take that same thing, use what the guys at Barrett did a long time ago, and put the 416 together in that, which is simply a shortened neck down case and then running a 416 round. And then two things I'm doing there. One, it's that same, I'll put a bit of the opposite into the equation of the bullet versus the powder weight ratio, and coming down and bullet, and definitely taking a whole heap of weight out. We're running 800 to 900 grains. The heaviest bullet I fired was 500 grains. I ran the Lehigh Defense at the 494 grains, and I ran the Cutting Edge at 444 grains. So half the weight bullet in the same platform. And you can instantly see how much different that makes. That really does make a huge amount of difference. There's a moderate difference in powder, but not a ridiculous amount actually. So a huge amount of bullet speed. We're up in the 32s to 3,300 feet per second with the 500 grain projectiles, so they'll go on pretty well. A little bit of sorting out. The barrel in that one is a long barrel. We've got 35 inches of barrel. It's a Lothar Walther barrel, so very good barrel. A little funky on the inside of it. When the gunsmith with Brett was doing up the stuff, there's some little bit of weird stuff going on, so it's something we might have to readdress. But I'm not one to care too much about what it really looks like inside there, as long as it works. And we certainly went through a very careful bedding process in that one there because of the bullet speed we're going to be running. And we certainly found the difference of the bullet that you see in front of you there is the Lehigh Defense, very high ballistic coefficient. Maybe on the edge of stability issues. I've got to figure some of that stuff out yet. Certainly the bullets the cases, I don't have all my prep gear for them yet. I'm waiting for some of that stuff. Some of the stuff wasn't in the country. And so they were fairly crude loads in the way they loaded up. So there's a fair bit of work to do. I've got some neck turning to do and bits and pieces to make that brass work properly. But still, it's what I was going to say there is the difference between the Lehigh Defense at 494 grains with such a very nice shaped bullet in comparison to the Cutting Edge bullet, which is still a well recognised bullet. It's only the 444. A lot of people are using heavier, some are using lighter, a lot are using the lasers versus what we were using the MTAC. But they are nowhere near as efficient for travelling, or nowhere near as high a BC. Efficient's a bit of a funny word, so, but nowhere near as high in the BC. And for that reason, the difference was phenomenal. At just under 2,400 yards, there was the Lehigh Defense were at 60 MOA. The Cutting Edge, the lighter bullet, a little bit lighter, was running at 75 MOA. So monstrous difference on that sort of stuff, and there's a fair bit of R&D to go through there. Oh, what I would say out of that sort of stuff, this is, the last bit I'd go with that is, once again, this is just a couple of barrels. So as much as there is a fair bit of expense in going through that side of things and loading and setting up, this is really all in the fashion of doing I suppose there's a couple of angles to it. One is doing the logic of and proving those things, showing those things, making it a bit more obvious to people. There is a whole gang of the world that would think the 50 BMG is the best long-range sniper rifle there is, and by no means is it the best long-range sniper rifle there is. It has a very good job. It is anti-material. Largely, most of the stuff you see is not super accurate by any means. You know, they're happy to hit the Land Cruiser at 1,000 yards sort of stuff. Not quite that bad, but that side of things. So largely more an anti-material and nowhere near as much accuracy. Not to say they can't get really accurate with lots of work. Most of the super accurate guns that you see in competitions and things, and down to ridiculously small groups, you know, 2 inches and less at 1,000 yards, are 50 kilo guns. So, you know, coming into over 100 pounds worth of guns. So monstrous heavy things, a lot of that sort of stuff, which is, in my opinion, getting beyond what is really a firearm or a man-shot firearm. It's moving more into something bigger and better than that. And then what I'm talking about there is just the amount of inertia that it creates, the amount of shock that's going on, which is where some of that accuracy goes missing. And so to bring that down into a smaller level at 4.16, and then at the complete opposite end with these 6.5s and 6s, and it's still noticing how the gun behaves by getting that bullet weight even lower. Like I started the conversation, I have a feeling that somewhere in the middle of that sort of stuff, and around the 200 grains probably, and whether that's 6mm or 7mm, but in something with a lapel bolt face, and we're getting into that same sort of country in the mid 3,000 feet per second, may do a job really, really well at precision, ultra precision, extreme long range shooting. But there's places. The 4.16 is known for and has won lots of ELR competitions. Largely, my understanding of it is that the reason the 4.16 does so very well out there is it is efficient, it works well. They're big, heavy guns, and maybe as they start to lower the weight, it's the weight of the guns that'll change. But one of the big details is being able to spot your impacts. When you only have a set string of shots and you only have a small patch you're shooting into and the side of a hill, that sort of stuff, which a lot of these ELR competitions are, then that bigger bullet, a manageable rifle, which is, although might not be extreme as accurate as a slightly smaller caliber, the difference is being able to spot that impact where people are shooting and not seeing that impact. And there's a lot going on. The people who think you can just dial in, it doesn't work that way without a lot of feedback. You can't see wind in the middle of an ELR shot. It doesn't travel across the ground. It has to go through the air. So discovery always happening in your first shots, and having that bigger round that means that you can see it and bring yourself back on target faster because you can see that first impact, or easier to see it, has some logic to it. And I would sort of counter with the fact that if you have something that does the job better but is still seeable with all the rest of the system stepping up to it, then I think you'll find that it'll come back into it. And of course, I started with as I use the 375 Gibbs or 375 SHI-TAC improved, which is already down that road. This was all stuff I thought about previously, but I'm big enough or not silly enough to think I know everything by any means. And there is a whole logic to, you can talk all you like, but unless you've actually done it, unless you've actually been there and done a certain amount of it, then listen, it's a lot easier to stand on solid ground in the conversation when you have actually, to a degree, pushed that button and seen what the result is. So anyway, listen, that's our little gang. That's what we've been up to this week. Bit of shooting. It was way too windy. Hopefully the wind backs off. We'll still bang into that. Our on-the-ground spotting system has certainly helped. There's buffety and stuff going everywhere. You saw the dust fly around with our big muzzle brake on the big one. As much as designed to shoot the gas out, there's a fair bit of gas going everywhere with that big fella. But, and I suppose in proof to both of these, both this, which Sam loved to shoot, she really enjoyed a few shots with it, really, really nice with a nice bit of power to it at 1,000 yards. And in truth, the big one, that shot, the 416, that's a real pleasure to shoot. That's really a different creature compared to shooting the 50 barrel in it. It will go back shortly with the 50 barrel, by the way. I've got to finish off what I'm doing. Want to make sure we tag steel properly at over 2 miles with the 50 with what we've done. And we've got a fair bit to do with the 416. Whether we end up running those big bullets or we run some other ones, we'll see. And maybe we've got some barrel work to do. I don't think so. I think it'll all bed in nicely. I think it'll all end up in the right place. But both, listen, lovely rifle to shoot, working really well. Brett did the chambering on both of them, did a great job, and that all was picked up on that day. So we've had a fair bit of a busy week with sorting out loading and that sort of stuff, and have a fair bit more to come. Anyway, guys, I hope that makes some sense. I hope I wasn't rambling too much there. This, by the way, this MDT chassis, awesome. Like it a lot. I do like it with my barrel, with the guard on the front there for my Bipod system. This all works really well. And the scope, yeah, I don't normally, like I said before, normally using the NightForce, really do like them, but this is a really good option. Works really nicely, functions super well, really good glass, really fine reticle in this one, in the G2 of the Recons, really fine, needs a bit of power to use with that, but the reticle being as fine as it is means that it works really well. I tend to run a little bit more power in this scope than I do in any others. I was up in the 20 shooting at 1,000, and I'm normally back in the 15s. This tends to encourage it and gives you very good vision doing it. Anyway, enough of my babble. Glad you catched up with us, and we'll catch you next time.